Hi, in this video we're going to be looking at direct proportion. So this is part of GCSE maths and will also be part of for those of you that are doing level 3 algebra. So this is something that comes up there as well. Okay, so without further ado, we'll get started. I'm going to go through some examples and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to have a go at some questions yourself. We're going to start by looking at this example over here. We've got this part here that's telling us that y is directly proportional to x. That's what that's telling me. So essentially what that's saying is that there's something I can multiply my x by to give me my y. So we usually use letter k for that. So that tells me that y is equal to something, or k, multiplied by x. Okay, my first job is to work out what is the value of that k. Okay, that's going to be my magic number that relates these two things together. So I need to find that out first. Well, luckily, I've been given some information that's going to help me, because I've been told that when x is equal to 5, y is equal to 15. So I'm going to use that information to help me work out what k is. I'm going to substitute the 15 in for y and the 5 in for x. So that tells me that 15 is equal to k times 5. Okay, so I prefer to write that as 5k. K times 5 and 5k means the same thing, so I'll write it as 5k. Okay, so now that I know that 15 is equal to 5k, that tells me that k must be equal to 3. Okay, so I now know to work out my y, I would multiply my x by 3. Okay, because that value of k is 3. So I'm going to substitute that into my original equation, and that's going to tell me that y is equal to 3 times x. Okay, so that k has been replaced with a 3 because I've now worked that out. Okay, so that will now allow me to work out the last part of this question. I'm being asked to find the value of y when x is equal to 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute x equals 4 into that equation, and that's going to help me work out what y is. So let's do that. So that tells me that y is equal to 3 times x. I now know that x is 4, so 3 times 4. And that tells me that y is equal to 12. So my answer to this question here is going to be y is equal to 12. Okay, let's look at a different example. So this time we're going to be looking at this question here, where we've got, again, y is directly proportional to x. That's what that's telling me there. So that means that I can write the same as I did before, that y is equal to k times x. Okay, so like I did before, I'm going to use the information that was given to me, that when x is equal to 12, y is equal to 3. So I'm going to substitute that in to help me work out what that k is. So the y is now going to be 3 is equal to, and that's going to be k times 12, which I'm going to write down as 12k. Okay, so now to work out what k is, I need to be a bit careful here. I'm going to divide both sides of this equation by 12. So that's going to tell me that k is going to be equal to 3/12. Okay, and I know that 3/12 simplifies as a fraction to 1/4. So I'm going to change 3/12 to 1/4. Okay, so k is equal to 1/4, which makes sense. 12 times 1/4 does give me 3. Okay, so now I can write down my equation here. So I now know that k is 1/4. So that tells me that y is going to be 1/4 times x. Okay, so I'll put a little box around that. That's going to be my main equation now that I've worked out. Okay, so I'm going to use this equation to work out the value of x when y is equal to 10. So this time I've been told what y is rather than x. Okay, so I'm going to substitute 10 into this equation over here. So y, which is now 10, is equal to 1/4 times x. Okay, so that means there's 1/4 of this value x that's going to give me 10. That x, I think, needs to be 40, because 1/4 of 40 is equal to 10. But to work this out, I would multiply both sides of this equation by 4. So 4 times 10 is 40, and 4 times 1/4 x gives me a whole x. So that tells me that 40 is equal to x. I would prefer to write that as x is equal to 40. Okay, so that's going to tell me my answer for that one there. Okay, right, so moving on, we're going to have a look at this next question over here. So this time I've got y is directly proportional to not x but x squared. So like I did before, I'm going to say y is equal to k times, but this time I'm going to say x squared. So there's something I can multiply x squared by this time that's going to give me y. So we're going to work out what that something is. Okay, so like I did before, I'm going to substitute my values in. So I'm told that when x is equal to 2, y is equal to 20. So I'm going to replace the y with 20, and that's going to be 20 is equal to k times, and my x is 2, so I'm going to do k times 2 squared. Okay, and I know that 2 squared is 4, so I'm going to replace that with k times 4, but I would prefer to write this as 4k. Okay, so I'm going to write it as 4k. Oops. Okay, and then that tells me that k must be equal to 5. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So k is equal to 5, which means my equation for this one, I now know what k is, I can replace it. So I've got y is equal to 5x squared. Okay, so that tells me the relationship between x squared and y this time. Okay, so I've now used that to work out the last part of this question. It says find the value of x when y is equal to 125. So I'm going to replace the y with 125, and that's going to be equal to 5 times x squared. Okay, so that tells me I can divide both sides by 5 here to solve this equation. So that tells me that 25 is equal to x squared, or x squared is equal to 25. Okay, and now I want to square root both sides of this equation. So that tells me that x is going to be equal to, well, the square root of 25 is 5, but because we're solving an equation here, there's two possible values. It could be a positive 5, because 5 squared is 25, but it could also be a negative 5, because negative 5 squared means negative 5 times negative 5, which is also 25. Okay, so there's actually two answers here. We've got plus or minus 5. So I can leave my answer like this, or I could write it as x is equal to 5 and x is equal to negative 5. Yeah, so I can write them both separately, but written like this is absolutely fine. X is equal to plus or minus 5. Okay, the next part of this question, we've got y is directly proportional to the square root of x this time. Okay, so I've got y is equal to something times by the square root of x. So I'm going to write it as y is equal to k root x. So like I did before, so I've used this part of my information here. So I now know that when x is equal to 16, y is equal to 40. So I'm going to substitute those values in to help me work out what k is. So I'll replace the y with 40. I'm going to replace the x with 16. So that means I've got k times the square root of 16. Okay, so that's what we're doing. The square root of 16, which I know is 4. Okay, so I could say 40 is equal to k times 4, or 40 is equal to 4k. I would prefer to write it like that. Okay, and then that tells me, well, I have to divide both sides by 4, and that tells me that k is going to be equal to 10. So I can write this equation as y is equal to 10 root x. Okay. Okay, so now I know what that equation is. I know the relationship between the y and the square root of x. I can use that to work out the last part of this question. Okay, so it says find the value of x when y is equal to 60. So I'm going to replace the y with 60. So I've got 60 is equal to 10 times the square root of x. So I can divide both sides by 10, so that's going to tell me that 6 is equal to the square root of x, or the square root of x is equal to 6. And then to work out what x is, this time I need to square both sides, okay? So to undo the square root of x, I need to square it. That's going to give me x. And then I need to do the 6 squared as well. The 6 squared gives me 36. Okay, so my answer for this last part here is going to be k is equal to 36. Okay, so those are all the different types of questions that we're going to have a look at in this video. I've now got some questions here that I would like for you to have a go at. So if you can pause the video at this stage and have a go at the questions that are there, and then I will go over the answers. Okay, well done if you've had a go at these. I'm going to go through one answer at a time, so you can pause the videos in between if you haven't quite finished. So the first question, you should have worked out that y is equal to 6x for this one over here, and then y is equal to 48 as your final answer. Okay, the second one, we should have worked out that y is equal to a half of x as your equation. And then to work out x when y is equal to 15, you should have got x is equal to 30 as your final answer. Okay, for part C, we should have got the equation y is equal to 4x cubed. And then for your final answer over here, you should have worked out that x is equal to 3. Okay, the last part, we've got y is equal to 5 times the square root of x. And then you should have worked out that x is equal to 36 for that part there. Okay, thanks very much for joining me today. I hope you found that useful. Please don't forget, to like and subscribe at the end of this video. And please leave me a comment if there's any videos that you would like to see me make in the future. Thanks once again, and I'll see you next time.